Virtual teachers of Reddit. Due to COVID-19, was it shocking to see how some of your kids actually live? And if so, what was the most extreme story? I had a kid with a loaner Chromebook from school. He would always Zoom from a car while parked in a Starbucks parking lot. After some digging, I found out that his family is homeless. They go to Starbucks for the free Wi-Fi. Ugh, this one hurts. I had a kid who was stuck in the middle of a custody thing mid-quarantine. He was so excited to show us his new digs when he moves in May. The place he was excited about had gaping holes in the drywall, graffiti written all over the inside of the house, and broken crap everywhere. But he got run of the whole basement floor, and there was enough land for his homeless buddy, also a student of mine, to park his mobile home out back. I didn't want to know what living conditions he'd come from to be excited about that. That honestly breaks my heart. A colleague and I were driving around town delivering work and school stuff to our kids. He went to go find one of his students and found them in a rough-built shack behind a gas station. He said it was about the size of his camper and had 4 people living in it. His is a mostly affluent school, so he was really shocked to see that. Put things in perspective a little. I lived in a trailer with no heat or running water in Colorado when I was a kid. We had a space heater in the front room. We all slept together with all the blankets. School was my only escape. Snow days really sucked. I tutored kids online in math for the last few months. Nothing of note except for this one kid, sweet as a button, who never worked in a quiet space. They had to work on their kitchen table, so there was always one of the following. 1. Their parents discussing mundane things at a high volume. 2. His brother raging at video games. I'm talking full on maxed out the microphone raging every 10 minutes. 3. His brother playing violin. He was not very good. I'm not a teacher but a student. I've seen somebody walk around with their phone as they took care of their farm animals. He's got some cute rabbits. Finally, a wholesome experience. I once showed my dog to my class, which no one else in the chat would. Not something I saw, but I asked what they're enjoying about distance learning, and a shocking amount said that they can use the bathroom whenever they want. Here's a positive one. When my students send me pics of their homework, occasionally there will be a pet on their bed or a paw in the pic. I made a big deal out of how delighted I was to see pets, and then the assignments with pet cameos came rolling in, including farm animals posing with homework. I'm on summer break now, but my Spanish teacher would always make a point of asking to see our pets. She would always go nuts when she saw my cats because they're her favorite type of pet. One of my students seemed to live in an actual mansion. I thought it was a green screen or something, but saw their parents walking around behind them later. Some of my students had absolutely no privacy whatsoever, and chaos reigned. How can I be mad that they can't get their work done? Hint, I can't. I'm a student and my dad's a teacher, so we're in class at the same time. He's not my teacher though, and it's not so much the privacy but the noise. I can hear his classes more clearly than my own. I teach 5th grade and I had a student who kept apologizing for getting her work in late. She said she had to watch her younger brothers and feed them dinner because her mom worked 2 jobs outside of the home. While not really shocking considering the district I'm in, I never would have guessed this was her circumstance. She's 10 and had the responsibilities of a parent. Not surprised, but I gave one help to a kid, 13M, who was babysitting 3 toddlers. It was exhausting just watching him. Can't imagine actually being there 24/7. Dang. That kid deserves an A just for dealing with that. My son was on a Zoom call with his teacher who had 5 grandkids under age 4 and 3 dogs in her 2-bedroom house. Her kids all work in first responder or medical jobs and the daycares were closed. His speech therapist does all of her lessons from her car in the Starbucks parking lot because they have good Wi-Fi. COVID sucks. I had a student in my class last year who we were well aware had a rough home life. The poor kiddo struggled big time with mental health and behaviors and his self-esteem. I lost a lot of sleep about this child and his well-being long before COVID. Every day, I met with him individually for a significant amount of time. The things I saw in 3.5 months broke my heart on a new level. I had no idea what his true reality was. I am an adult who is arguably well adjusted and has strong coping skills. Every day after I got off video chat I was so overwhelmed and upset. And I wasn't even in the home. During all of our calls, his guardian was situated half clothed in a recliner behind the computer. It was in their living room. His guardian would yell and scream at my student, call him names, talk about him with another adult in the room, that effer did this or that. His family would have constant screaming match fights, or have raging dance parties so loud I could barely communicate with my student. The guardian would also jump in, yelling at him if she didn't think he was listening to me or on task. There was constant negative background noise. I always try to operate with the assumption as a teacher that I don't know all the baggage my students are carrying and that it's my job to lead with kindness and compassion always. This opened my eyes to just how important that really is and just how little I really knew about the things this kiddo was battling against. Didn't physically witness anything, but one of my high achievers handed in one assignment then crickets after the switch to virtual. I got a hold of him through a few emails, and later, guidance counselor. His parents were separating, divorcing due to an abusive father. Within 2 weeks kid and mum were in a women's shelter and his semester was tanked, not to mention his mental health. Frick that dad. Kudos to his mum for being brave and getting them out of there though. The reverse I suppose, but as a student I never pictured how chaotic my professor's home life was until doing a Zoom conference with him. I think he has like 5 kids, all very young. They were constantly coming in and interrupting and trying to show him things. He and his wife both teach at my university, so I can't imagine how stressful their lives are. Definitely gave me some perspective. 2 kids here. Canadian government officer. It is incredibly difficult to run a meeting when the 2 little ones need to show me something or ask a question every 5 minutes. You're in this weird place where you want to bark at them but at the same time answer every question they have honestly and encourage them to keep learning. I need my office back. This virus can frick right off. Not a teacher but I work in child safety. So many teachers and schools are insisting on kids being at desks, wearing non-pajamas, and having a quiet environment. Too bad so many of the kids we work with live in houses where they may share a bedroom with 3 siblings, or more, where the idea of quiet time is impossible due to living with a baby, an elderly family member, or just a bunch of other kids also doing school from home. Most kids don't have a desk at home. A large portion of kids don't have somewhere all their own except their beds, and some don't even have that, and schools will still give them crap about that. One of the schools we worked with considered it a really good day when 30% of the kids showed up. Dad and granddad just casually came in and out of the background in nothing but tighty whities. About halfway through the lesson they stopped. It was all I could do to keep a poker face. We never mentioned it, but lol. Not every day that Walter White swings by your class. Friend is a teacher in a small, poor, rural town. She was surprised that a couple of normally good students didn't participate in the Zoom classes. She called them and found out that they were too embarrassed of their homes. The shop teacher made backdrops for each student so they'd all have the same. No one stood out. She also noticed some kids were in a car in town. Turns out they didn't have internet, so their parents would park outside the library or a local bar to jump on their Wi-Fi. The school then made sure each kid had internet at home. The benefit of a small school district is they can provide those things without much red tape or expense. Even though my friend has been teaching in the town for 30 years, she had no idea how some of the students lived. They hid it from classmates and teachers. I'm a student, not a teacher, but I saw one of my classmates in a bathtub one day. Nobody even mentioned it, he was just there. I was a student teacher in the spring, and I'm about to start full-time teaching at the same school next week. The school is in a low-income neighborhood, South Los Angeles. Honestly, I was most shocked by how good the living environments appeared to be. You could tell they were small and old apartments with generally too many people living in them, but they were clean and homey. It really relieved me to see how hard their parents were working to give them a good home and a good life. And it really inspired me to work equally hard to give them a quality education that might hopefully help propel a few forward in life. Coming from a first-gen college student with a master's degree, it's amazing how much of a quality of life difference a stupid piece of paper can make. And I'm a teacher, so that's saying something. My middle school team agreed to not require kids to show their face background. One time a kid surprised me though. His little brother, probably 8 years old, was bothering him during one of the last few classes, and they had a pool. I was honestly more surprised by the pool since I teach Title 1. A student said to just throw the kid in the pool. I stopped this and probably gave the most important life lesson ever. Wait. There's a checklist you need to go through before throwing someone in a pool. 1. Can they swim? 2. Do they have electronics on them? 3. Is it safe? If it passes all of those, throw them in the pool. 3. Should include a check of the pool depth. I heard a very sad story of a woman whose back was broken after her husband tossed her into the shallow end. I've done virtual since March and did it over summer for summer school. Yes, but most shocking moment. I saw a mom in a thong. It took me a second to realize I was seeing the backside of this unsuspecting middle-aged woman. No judgment. I'm 40, just giving a visual. This was not some penthouse forum moment. As a heterosexual female witnessing a woman I do not know in a thong, yes, it was shocking. Glad it was me instead of a male coworker. Luckily, I used 2 computers, one for Zoom and one to actually check their online work. I pretended to be very focused on the other computer as if I did not see what I saw. However, it did make me realize the teenage girl and the mom share a room, and that's probably why she usually keeps the lights off and the camera angled away from the room. This was the one time the lights were on, and, if you know Zoom, you know the breakout rooms and how they work. I had the student by herself in a breakout room. I suspect they didn't expect me to be popping in to check on her right at that moment. No one had said or acknowledged anything, so I think in the clear. After this, I think Zoom needs a "hey, I'm joining your breakout room" option. Kinda like a polite knock. Weird world we live in, trying to figure out a new etiquette. Being in a thong makes me think of the shoes cause that's what we call it. So I imagined a woman wearing a single thong on her foot. In the rural areas of my country, some students had to climb up a tree in order to get a secure Wi-Fi connection. Not only that, they sometimes get attacked by snakes and other wild animals during class. After this thing went viral, the government then finally started to make some effort to help. It's sad that when a thing started to go viral, only then the government start to act. In Malaysia the same thing happened exactly, but thankfully one girl brought attention and the government gave her aid and other students in the area. I teach at a private school and was completely mesmerized by some of my students' houses, immaculately clean throughout quarantine and straight out of a magazine. I taught preschool too, so I at least expected to see some toys strewn about or something in the background. I was shocked at how one of my students managed to stay focused in every class despite her wild little brother goofing off in the background and doing everything he could to get her attention. Your career choice does not put your username in a good light. I teach English to 4-5-year-olds. Had a parent spoon feed their child throughout the whole lesson. The lesson was an hour and a half. I've been an online teacher for 4 years, and seeing the lives of my Lebanese students slowly disintegrate over the last couple years has been the worst. These people are trilingual college educated professionals with bidets and iPads and a vacation house in the mountains. And their electricity comes on for 2 hours every day. It's insane. Yeah, I mean it really is tough transferring to that type of lifestyle. We went from vacationing abroad 2 or 3 times to not being able to get our life savings out of the banks. Now all the prices have at least tripled and more people are unemployed. Honestly, my teenage male summer school students, I haven't actually seen half of their faces. Not because the camera isn't on, it is, but because they'll only let me see their foreheads. There are 13-14 male students I've been teaching since the first week of July and I couldn't pick them out of a lineup. I also routinely see people turning to the side and full on screaming at family members, or leaving their audio off and hearing family fights. Fun times. My wife is a high school teacher. When they first went virtual in March, a lot of male students would log on shirtless. Was pretty awkward for her to have to ask them to put a shirt on. Someone got in trouble for smoking pot on camera. Student here. It was pretty cool to see everyone else in a messy room, whilst shirtless with a headset on. It's definitely the most effective way to work. I'm a student, not a teacher, but my favorite thing I saw during online class was a kid take a huge bong rip and blow smoke into his camera in an 8 AM graduate level class. You could tell it was an accident and not his first hit, because then he carried his phone to the bathroom to do his hair or something, realized his camera was on, looked absolutely horrified, and turned it off. Lmao, at least he was a grad student and not a high schooler. I am not a teacher or a student, but the city where I live just had a news story about a man who killed his girlfriend while her 10-year-old girl was in the middle of online school. Her teacher called the police, and when they got there the teacher was still on the laptop, calmly giving directions to the 3 children to stay in the back bedroom until the cops came. It was horrifying. Oh my, that's horrifying. Props to the teacher for staying calm. I know I would be freaking out. My parents are teachers, said most of the students have their camera off, but when on they would catch a curious sibling in the background watching the class. Craziest I saw was one time we signed into a class and a dude was already sleeping there, open mouth and everything. Another time a friend of mine took a screenshot of his bedroom so he could set as the background while he was still in bed. Your friend will go far in life, lol. You know, when I was in school, I didn't even have a desk at home. I used to do my homework at the library after school, before I went home. I can't imagine trying to work at home as a kid. My home was a madhouse. There was always some kind of insanity going on between all my family members. I love the library. I had many brothers and sisters growing up, and the house we lived in then was half the size of the one my parents have now. Student here. Half the class never turned the camera on. 1/4 of the class were serious about their appearance. The other quarter and some of the no camera group were chill about it and always up for some cameos or funny stuff to do while the teacher was giving their lesson. Sometimes someone who cared the less about the classes let other people in who named themselves with funny names. Think of something like Mike Cox Long but in another language, and wrote funny stuff. Good times. I can say something about how the teachers live though. Some of them live in houses that totally represent their personality, like our history and philosophy teacher who has more an encyclopedic knowledge rather than a teacher's one, always streamed from her big library room full of old books that she probably inherited by relatives during her lifetime. Mike Cox Long. We may not think about it, but it's a bit shocking that so many families out there either can't afford decent internet or live in a place that doesn't have it. Hard to learn online when you can't keep a video stream up for an entire class without lag dropping. I decided not to even try and just abandoned my college dreams for this year. I live in the middle of nowhere, and while I usually have good internet if it's just me using it, if anyone is home using the internet at the same time as me it just goes out on us, and my brother is always home. There's going to be an education gap between the rural kids and towny kids after this, I bet. In the spring with distance learning I learned a bunch of the kids live in mansions with designer dogs and brand new dirt bikes. Explained a lot of entitled behavior. Designer dogs. College student here. I'm just amazed people my age are still freaking dumb enough to not mute their mics. Like bro, everybody can hear you eating that sandwich. 1. Mute your mic, and 2. Chew with your mouth closed, you barnyard swine. I work at a small tech company. It never changes, and it's always the same people with the same annoying habits. Zero awareness. There was one kid who was doing poorly in school. I've talked to his parents and they seem like normal, middle class people. They seem to have money and a great personality. When I started up the class, he joined with a black eye. I asked what happened, and he said he hurt himself. All of a sudden this loud screeching noise came, and it was his mother, except it wasn't the person I saw in the meeting. The person in the meeting was the kid's sister, and the dad was her boyfriend. The mom was very obnoxious, and she was constantly yelling at the kid. When the kid broke down in tears, she walked over to him and smacked his face with a belt. I had to call the police, and the kid is living with his sister now. I hope he's doing better, and good for you for calling the cops. I teach 2nd grade. In 3 days of virtual teaching I've had one mom try and help her son with the call in her underwear. One kid tell his dad to turn down the TV so he could learn. To which dad responded cabron and a slew of what I can only imagine other Spanish expletives, because I have never seen anyone find the mute button so fast, and I have realized that over half of my class is either home alone or being watched by other siblings. I teach in an urban district where parents can't afford to stay home. Students' walls were peeling paint so badly you could see the sheetrock. She is 10 years old and has 6 siblings and was required during every morning class we had to feed and care for her youngest sister who has to be under a year old. Her family knew she was in class via webcam and walked around half naked in the background. Every single day she ate ramen noodles and an ice pop for breakfast. She would often end up leaving class early to care for her baby sister, even though her mom and much older brother seemed to be home all day. Mom would blatantly have 10-15 people over in the middle of the day in the living room and be loud as frick and straight up didn't care. I knew her home life wasn't the best, but witnessing it at this capacity was pretty nauseating. I'm noticing a pattern of kids in bad situations babysitting other kids, having adults in the house half naked, and constantly dealing with loud noises. I saw nothing of note. It was bedrooms and couches. Kids were in PJs a lot. Sometimes there were siblings and parents in the background. Really boring actually, which is good. Same here, TBH. One kid had spray painted their wall, but nothing crazy. Not a teacher, but a student. Also wasn't one of my classes, but a friend's. The kid was in class while taking a crap. Weird enough, but then the dude wipes his butt and smells the toilet paper. All of this in on camera and I don't think he realized it. I felt bad for the kid. People noticed and there's no coming back from that. A lot of parents don't realize that their kid's mic is on, and it's really awkward hearing kids get chewed out in front of the entire class and other nearby parents. I learned that one of my tutoring clients lives near the major international airport in my city, which means that every 5 minutes or so, there's the loud sound of planes taking off or landing. He also has a little cousin who is pretty vocal and interrupts a lot. Made me realize how much he has going on at home and how hard it must be to focus on his HW. Major perspective shift for me. Reminds of my science teacher who lived right by the train tracks. Every 10 minutes we had to stop the lesson because of how loud it was. I taught some 150 Chinese students. Almost none of them turned on their webcams, and those that did used a digital background. I used a digital background too. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.